Skulle du vilja öppna persiennen?
Ja, visst kan jag göra det.
Good evening. Welcome to the podcast Compels You, the show in which we review movies that fit our current cursed category, which is given to us by our evil AI mastermind. A cursed category consists of two requirements for a movie, and the curse is that if we don't find and review them on time, two movies that fit the two requirements, our evil AI mastermind punishes us somehow. We don't know how. I'm your host, Stacy. I'm here tonight with my co-host, Bill. How are you tonight, Bill?
I'm good. My 3-day weekend's starting tomorrow, so I'm
Woo!
I'm rearing to go here. As if I was like a young college kid on spring break, but an old, not college kid, not on spring break. Similar vibe.
I'm talking about scary movies, so I'm totally in my happy place right
Excellent.
now.
Excellent.
Speaking of that, have you seen anything?
I've seen some weird ones. Not weird, just kind of different from one another. So watched this movie called Milk and Cereal with an S. Have you heard of this?
No.
So this YouTube comedy duo made their own movie for $800, put it on YouTube, and it's really good. It's got like this interesting premise, kind of an interesting twist, and it's the perfect kind of film to record on an $800 budget. I will say that much. Super
That's
good.
amazing.
And like I said, it's free on YouTube, so definitely check out Milk and Cereal. Definitely recommend that. And it's kind of short. I think it's like an hour 10 or an hour 15.
Did you ever see that movie they made during the COVID lockdown called, I think it was called The Host, and it was all made like on Zoom?
No, but I've heard of it.
It's pretty good too.
Is that right?
But I'm sure it was way more than $800. I mean, it was a real production.
Oh, wow.
But it was, still pretty modest as far as movies go.
I forgot that was during COVID. Right. That would make sense. The second movie I saw, I think we actually briefly talked about Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I have never seen
Oh.
this movie and it's been on my list. And we did cover some comedic films early in this series that kind of, I think, is why we brought it up. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
I mean, it's all right.
I just thought it was like a pretty clever premise done in varying degrees of cleverness, honestly. I thought it's one of those things, if you like that brand of humor, it's hilarious. If you don't, I could see it totally missing someone. But I was totally there for it because this and Shaun of the Dead are the two horror comedies everybody quotes as being like the best ones. So, of course,
I
I've
do
seen
like
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, it's fantastic. And then the other thing, I started rewatching American Horror Story Cult season, which is unusually prescient for today's times.
Right? Because it was 2016, right? It was like an
Yep, it was
election
right. It
year
takes place
story.
right after, yeah, Trump was elected.
Started watching that, and then I just had to put it aside for personal emotional reasons.
And that's what brings me to that. What's interesting, I did watch the whole thing when it came out, and I did not like it because, like most people, they're like, I'm just trying to get away from this horrible political topic, and you want to have a show on this. So I didn't like it originally. A few years later, I watched it again, loved it. Now I'm watching it again during these times, and it's a little bit unnerving again. So it's like when you watch a show or a movie, is like can change everything, especially when it has to do with like present events. But
Yeah,
oh
that's
my,
really true. They've canceled entire movie releases just entirely off the face of the planet because of different tragedies and things that have happened.
oh yeah,
Imagine being a part of those movies and just having wrapped up production and then school shooting or something,
right.
and it takes the complete plot of your movie, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it wouldn't be a school shooting movie. That's just the most common thing that happens now. So
Yeah,
that's where
exactly.
my mind went. But yeah,
Right.
that's happened a
Yeah.
few times.
What have you been watching?
Well, I saw Beetlejuice in the theater.
Nice. How was it?
I really wanted to like this
Oh
so badly.
no.
And there were some really cute things about it.
Uh-huh.
I love Winona Ryder since back in the day, and I
Sure.
loved seeing her back with Michael Keaton again. This was like a very special, the original was a very special movie in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
They, reprised their respective roles from the original. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they made fun of child molester Jeffrey Jones, like explaining away his absence by having his character like die a hilarious death. And then like there's this whole plane scene that was involved in his death, but instead of using like real footage, they did this, I think it was CGI that was made to look like claymation.
Oh,
And that was really funny and very much
nice.
in the tone of the original movie. And then there's Catherine O'Hara. She's funny, of course. I really like Jenna Ortega, and I think she did the best that she could with the script that they gave her. And
Huh.
I actually liked her subplot. I thought her subplot was the best plot. The rest of the movie was a fucking mess, though. There were like these extra antagonists that didn't add anything to the story. I think for me personally, they spent way too much time in the underworld, which used to be funny because it was like a pretty quick gag, you know?
Right, right, right.
Now they've
Loses its
made it this
effect.
whole thing. They fleshed it out and
Yeah.
it's not that fun. There were a couple of choreographed like one non-consensual choreography, if you remember
Hmm.
the dinner table scene from the first
Oh,
one.
yes. Uh-huh.
Something that kind of like calls back to that.
Sure.
And then there's another really great dance number in the movie that I won't spoil for you. But
Okay.
this choreography scene, it's very funny and very well done, especially Catherine O'Hara and Jenna Ortega.
Hmm.
But the song that they used for was really like old and obscure, in my opinion, and like not catchy or fun. And then I think anybody below the age of 70 would not know the song, and that kind of ruined it. Like
Yeah.
the Deo song, that was so
Hmm.
much fun. That
Oh,
was
for
that was part
sure.
of the fun.
And the jump in the line at the end,
Yes. Ah,
those are classics.
in summary, I think if you're a fan, you got to see it. You can't get around it, right? But just know you might be disappointed. Try not to have your hopes up too high because I don't want you to be sad. That's all.
I've heard only good things about it, except that the cast is a little bit bloated. Like there's just
Yeah.
too many characters and too many subplots that
Yes.
are not all equally of quality. So
Right.
that's all I heard. So I'm definitely going to see it hopefully soon.
I mean, that really makes it kind of drag in some places, even though it's
Right.
not very long. It's
Right.
really not that long. I don't know how they fit all that shit in there. They could have pared it down and really given us more time with the characters that we actually care about. Speaking about characters that we care about, would you like to talk about what we're going to be doing right
Oh,
now on this
right.
recording tonight?
Right. We have a task ahead of us here.
Only if you want to. I mean, I'm not here to push you around.
Well, I guess I can introduce our categories for this week's film, which are vampires outside of the US, or as my astute co host calls it, vampires without borders. Tonight we'll be talking about the 2008 Swedish vampire film Let the Right One In, with a novelization and screenplay by Jean Ajvide Lindqvist and director Thomas Alfredson. Thomas also directed Tinker Tailor Soldier Boy and 2017's The Snowman. It stars 13-year-old Kara Hederbrandt as Oskar and 13-year-old Lena Leanderson as Eli and Per Ragnar as Hakan. Hakan? I'm going to go with Hakan.
No idea.
Yeah, stumbled through a lot of those names there,
I
but
didn't
hopefully I got like
actually
half right.
I didn't actually hear his name in the movie, so I had forgotten completely
Yeah,
what his name was.
whatever his name is, we'll get to him. Let the Right One In tells the story of a very blonde Swedish boy living in a very solitary Swedish town who's getting bullied by very douchey bullies. His savior comes in the form of Eli, an odd little girl who moves into his apartment complex and helps Oscar. Could this totally normal, totally not a person who needs to feast on blood to live, be his soulmate? Keep listening to find out. Stacy, had you seen Let the Right One In, the original?
Because 12 years old is the perfect age to meet your soulmate. Yes, I saw this, not when it first came out, but more than 10 years ago, and possibly on DVD. When's the last time that you watched an actual DVD, Bill? Do you own any
Ooh,
DVDs?
I do. I have all the major horror franchises on DVD.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm impressed.
Outside of that, I've got a bunch of weird stuff from like early college, and I haven't even looked in that box. So there's probably some gems in there, though.
You had seen this before.
Yes. And I guess I must have seen it when it came out because I was going back. My college roommate, I think it was my last year of college, him and I went to see this. And I remember loving it, but more so for like the look and feel of it. It turns out I don't remember a lot of the plot points as I was going through this movie. So this watching experience was very different than my first one, I'll say, but
Interesting. I can't
in
wait
good
to
and bad
hear
ways.
about the good and bad ways that you reacted
Yeah.
to this rewatch.
I wonder if we'll have any similarities.
Speaking of that, I think I have some content warnings to serve up to you. Hopefully, I will do it astutely because I'm the astute
You are.
co-host.
Mm-hmm.
The main content warning here, I think, is violence and gore, some of which includes children. I mean, it's a vampire movie, so there is blood and violence to get the blood and drinking of the blood. That's just how it works. And the two main characters are children. So, yeah. There's one shot of scars from genital mutilation that may be disturbing. It certainly was to me when I first saw the movie. Although my version had this censored out. What kind of bullshit censorship is this? Not that I particularly wanted to see that shot again. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but I was just like, I get mad when people try to keep me from seeing things.
On principle.
Oh yeah, back to this. There's an attempted drowning. I think that might be it. As always, we encourage you to check the site doesthedogdie.com if you have particular triggers. That's the best site I know that surveys users on a long list of triggers about movies, but it does include some spoilers. I have noticed that some of the larger plot spoilers are hidden and marked as spoilers, and you have to click on them to see what they are. But I still would not count on that being a certainty. And they don't sponsor our podcast or anything, but if they wanted to, I
Ooh.
think we would not say no.
No, I think we could probably find a yes.
I'm still holding out for the Alamo Draft House one day.
Does that bring us to our dark fact of the day?
Back to you for Dark Fact of the Day.
Dark fact.
So today's dark fact deals with the possible origins of vampires. In the 1720s, there was a rabies epidemic in Hungary. Mentions of vampires soon followed around 1730, and it's interesting because many of the symptoms of rabies are oddly similar to characteristics attributed to vampires, such as a male affliction. Vampires are predominantly portrayed as men, except in this movie. Rabies affects men 7 times as often as women. Individuals with rabies become aggressive and attempt to bite, which is one way rabies can spread, similar to how vampirism is spread through biting. Rabies might cause people to become averse to strong or surprising stimuli, including odors such as garlic, light, and mirrors. And rabies sometimes makes it difficult for the afflicted to sleep, and they are therefore prone to having night wanderings. So, who knows? Could vampires have come out of the rabies scare of the 1720s, or is it just a coinkydink? So this is maybe more of a dark pondering of the day.
That is interesting. And I would say if you or any of our listeners are interested in like the whole history of any possible origin of vampires, like over a lot of different cultures, as well as tracing them through the like all the decades of Hollywood, I recommend Grady Hendrix's podcast. Grady Hendrix is a horror author that I like to read, and has a podcast. There's only a handful of episodes. I feel like he started off really ambitiously, and he had written a vampire book, so he's quite the researcher. He did a whole lot of research, and that's what led to this podcast. And I think his idea was, I'll do this podcast. Every season will be about the topic of my current book or most recent published book, which he writes one book every like 1 or 2 years. But over the years, he's only made like 4 or 5 episodes, but they're really intense with the research. He's pretty entertaining. It's a good listen.
What's the name of the podcast? You said, is it just his name?
If you look for Grady Hendrix's
Okay.
podcast, I can't remember the name of it, which I regret, but you certainly be able to find it
But listen to our podcast first, then listen to his.
every time,
Yes.
obviously. And there aren't that many episodes, and we're definitely like eclipsing him
Yes.
already, even though our podcast is nascent, fledgling.
For now. But anyway, that is our dark fact. And we are now going to have a quick intermission, which you'll hear some quick music. And then we'll be back to talk about Let the Right One in a very spoilerific way. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to hand it over to Stacy to walk us through Let the Right One In. Go for it, Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy again. I'm astute, and I'm here to spoil the entire movie of Let the Right One In for you. We begin the story with Oskar, our little, very, very blonde introvert. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Constantly like feeling for him in this.
Mm-hmm.
He's starting us off practicing his tough guy routine in front of his bedroom window. He's gripping a knife. Let's just call it Chekhov's knife. He's pretending to stand up to his bullies, having his own little like murder fantasy role play, as I'm sure a lot of kids do. Totally normal behavior. As he's doing this, we see that he's getting a new neighbor. Her name is spelled Eli, but I'm going to call her Ely because that's how they say it in the movie.
Perfect.
I'm trying to stick with that. We'll see how far I get.
I love it.
So Ely rolls in along with her, let's just call him her guardian, who's helping her move in. And right away, they're like putting up cardboard over the windows in the apartment.
Yeah, kind of weird. A little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to Oskar at school, where some of the best things happen. Things are super duper normal. Oscar's hanging out in class. He's like, I guess they have a police officer who's visiting, and he's answering.
What was this all about?
Some like morbid question, and he gets it exactly right.
Yeah.
Turns out he's super interested in this shit. So, being the creepy quiet kid is not exactly like how to make friends and influence people in elementary school. Now he's on the bullies' radar for the day, and they start giving him hell because they're mean kids, and that's what they do.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Ely's guardian is gearing up for some dark deeds. We see him with a jug, a funnel, and a mask, going for a walk, just normal guy, murder equipment. And he gasses some poor guy in the park, strings him up like a slaughterhouse kill, and starts draining his blood into that jug. Is there any advantage to stringing them upside down for this?
I think the blood runs quicker for some reason.
Why would it run quicker in one direction?
I don't know. Hold on. Well, think about it. If you stand on your head, all your blood rushes to your head. So if you're standing up, it doesn't
stand the other way.
It doesn't rush to your legs, though, does it?
It does. That's why people get what's it called? When they get the blood clots.
I was gonna say gout. It's not gout, though.
No, pulmonary embolism, because like the blood clot. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but that's how they die. Anyway, this guy, he started to kind of have what will turn out to be a run of bad luck with his murdering, and some kids and their dog come strolling by because that's what normal people use parks for that, and the dog gets really interested in the dead guy and the blood, which is, dog things, whatever. So Chester the molester has to run off and leave the blood behind.
First, though, he comically tries to push the dog away, which is hilarious. He's like, go. I think he throws a stick or something.
Yeah, he tries to talk the dog out of it.
Oh my God. I don't remember this guy being like the comic relief for large chunks of this movie, but this guy had this weird dark comedy thing going on. He's like kind of buffoonish almost. No, not, I understand his character, but these scenes that he's doing though, early on in the film.
That's good that you can see it that way. I should rewatch it, but I'm probably not gonna. Next we move on back to the life of Oskar. He's out in the snow, which I guess the entire movie is in winter, or it's
Mhm.
winter all of the time in
I
Sweden.
was
It's
gonna look
also
that up.
dark all of the time.
Right. It's a
Like
super weird environment in this
as soon
movie.
as he gets out of school, it's dark.
Yes.
And and he's always in the snow.
Yeah.
So he's out in the snow now with his Eye of the Tiger training montage routine to whoop the bullies, except
Yep.
now he's stabbing a tree like it owes him money. Like as he's doing this, he sees Ely for the first time standing on top of the jungle gym, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Very
And
cool.
then she hits him with, just so you know, I can't be your friend. And then immediately walks off. So mysterious, asocial, possibly like negging him. What's going on
That's how
here?
every good friendship starts. We can't be friends. And then you become best buddies.
That's how all of mine start. I don't
Yeah.
know about other people, but meanwhile, Ely's guardian creeps back from his murder attempt to the apartment. Super sad face because he
Yep.
botched it. And he botched the whole blood draining operation. Ely is not having it. She's pissed that she isn't going to have dinner. Now it's clear, if it wasn't before, she is a vampire.
I gotta say, this movie is incredibly efficient. Like, this is not that far into the movie. Like, they hit all of their
Oh,
plot points, like, boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, boom, boom. Like, you know
I
exactly
don't
what's going on.
I don't really think it was a reveal. You know what I mean?
No, but like
Like,
all of these things, like, you know, what her guardian's doing and like the relationship with the two kids, like you start to see everything pretty quick, I feel like.
yeah, no, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
So cut to the next day. Oscar's at school, hiding from the bullies like any random Tuesday. It's just a really quick shot. Like there's a lot of really small scenes.
Yeah.
Later at home, his mom starts chatting him up about the murder in the park, and she's totally unaware that her son is like quietly obsessed with this kind of thing. We then see him in his room, and he has a scrapbook full of newspaper clippings about murders and other assorted mayhem,
Right.
while punk rock plays in the background, because of course this kid is punk rock, that tracks. So that afternoon, even I don't even know what time it is. He's outside playing in the dark in the snow with a Rubik's Cube. Ely arrives again and tells him to go home because she wants to be alone. He tells her she should go home herself because he's lived there longer. But she's interested in his Rubik's Cube. He shows her how it works and she starts trying to solve it. Oscar notices that she is not dressed at all for the cold. And he's like, aren't you cold? I think she says she doesn't remember how to feel cold. And Oscar
Yeah.
like doesn't seem to think that's too weird or anything.
No.
And he ends up going home. He lets her keep the Rubik's Cube. After he leaves, though, we see that she's in distress. Like her stomach is making noises. She looks sad. She could have like, you know, been on him in a second and
Yep.
drunk his blood, then the movie would be over.
Hmm.
But she didn't, so maybe she likes him. Maybe he's not her favorite blood type. We
Hmm.
don't know yet.
True.
Next, we cut to these four adults that are sitting around. Looks like
The
a
pub.
bar,
Yeah.
maybe a restaurant bar situation. They are deep into a debate about the death penalty. Super fun social conversation. They spot Ely's guardian at another table, and one of them mentions he just moved to the neighborhood with his kid. That guy tries to strike up a conversation, and the guardian just like sits there ignoring him. Pretty awkward.
Yeah.
And
Very
then finally
awkward.
he's like, I gotta go, sorry. Yeah, that might have happened before the Rubik's Cube. So just, switch those around
Yeah.
in your mind.
Copy paste.
Uh, meanwhile, like, okay, two of the guys from the bar are gonna call it a night. One of them is a Yuke, and he is walking home alone when he hears Ely calling out from under a bridge.
Help me.
Like any decent person, he approaches, and after she says she can't walk, he picks her up. Sorry, buddy. Tonight you lost. Help a stranger roulette.
Oh man.
Ely attacks him, drinks his blood, and then snaps his neck to put him out of his misery. After that, she cries. I guess she's one of those good vampires who hates killing people.
I thought that was a pretty brutal kill. I do not remember it being that like, I don't know, it kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
caught me off guard a little bit.
I think the good vampire kid card really only works when you're a kid.
Yeah, I would say so.
Unfortunately for Ely and several other people in the movie, Weird Cat Guy witnesses the whole thing from his window. That's the character I'm introducing now, Weird Cat Guy.
Uh-huh.
Then we see Ely and the Guardian possibly arguing. It's not happy, whatever's going down. Oscar's trying to eavesdrop on them through the wall because it's the early 80s and there isn't a lot else to do.
No.
Meanwhile, our witness cat guy, he has a name. His name is Yosta, but I might forget that because I think I only wrote it down in one place.
You can stick with Cat Guy.
He heads over to the bar, restaurant, cafe, whatever, to be the messenger of bad news. He just saw someone get murdered.
Bum, bum, bum.
And it was his friend. Naturally, everyone's pretty distressed about that. So they rush over to that spot under the bridge. Sure enough, they find some blood in the snow. I feel like that was a pretty lucky find. They're just like, it was around about here. And then they start digging and there's some blood, like right away. Why they don't call the police right then, I could never figure out. Did we ever really know why?
Does he think they'll think he's crazy or something, maybe? Is it that kind of thing where he's like, I don't want to get involved with this or something? I don't know. But none of them do.
I am not sure, but I was really not that interested in the adult plot in this movie.
No.
I thought they were a little boring.
Yeah, until it gets kind of zany.
Sorry, Swedish people. We then see Ely's guardian dragging the body through the snow like a little red sled. Is that like a kid toy?
I think so.
And he goes to this place, like I guess at the lake where hot water is draining out of something for some reason. I have no idea what that was. But anyway, there's a hole in the ice and he dumps the body there, which I guess that's as good an idea as any. I think he really doesn't care that much at this point.
No.
So next scene, Ely cracks the Rubik's Cube, no problem. Oskar is impressed and asks her how old she is. What an interesting question.
Very.
She answers, 12, more or less, which Oskar rightly scrutinizes a little. He's like, what do you mean? Do you know your birthday? Don't you celebrate and get presents and shit? And Ely just kind of looks sad.
Yeah.
She does that a lot. She then shows Oskar how to solve the Rubik's Cube because as a vampire, naturally, she's smarter than he is.
Yep.
And of course, we get some tender piano music to underscore the moment. Back at Oskar's school, in a quick little scene, the teacher is reading from The Hobbit. Fun fact. Then, right after that, we see Oskar walking home again in the dark, in the snow. Maybe it's not dark. I don't know. One of the bullies corners him and asks what Oskar was writing because he stayed after class for a minute and demands to see whatever it was. And Oskar says no. Actually, he says nay because that's how they say no. It's really cute. And one of them grabs him by the neck and another starts whipping him with something.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is a weird scene.
Yeah.
It made me super uncomfortable. Like the kid who actually has to do the whipping is like the smallest kid of the bunch. And it's like, he's crying. Like, I think that kid's getting bullied too.
Yes.
Like the other one is making him do this and he doesn't even want to be doing it.
It's a very uncomfortable scene.
Yeah. So uncomfortable. Anyway, they run off. Oscar's just kind of standing there. I'm like, is he unconscious on his feet? But in the next shot, I guess he's not because he's at the kitchen table at home telling his mom how he fell down on the playground because one of the cuts is across his face. Next, Oskar teaches Ely about Morse code and even gives her a little cheat sheet that has the Morse code alphabet. Turns out that's what he was writing when the bullies tried to shake him down. So good thing he didn't give in.
Yep.
Ely notices that his face is messed up and she asks him what happened. And Oskar tells her about the bullies. And she gives him some advice that in my mind, I'm thinking it probably dates back a few centuries.
Yes.
She's like, just hit the guy back. Oscar's like, there's 3 of them. And Ely says, then hit harder and they'll stop. She even offers to help him out, which is interesting now that we know she's a vampire and she has murdered an adult.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but like when I heard that line, I knew that it was going to end badly for those kids.
Absolutely. Yes.
One way or another.
Uh-huh.
While this convo is happening, Ely's guardian is like looking on jealously from the window. Gross. We also see him get booted from the room so that Ely can knock on the wall to Oskar in Morse code, which is kind of funny.
Yes.
So tough day at the office for that guy. Meanwhile, Oskar is ready to get jacked. He asked the coach at school. I guess it's at school. I think, yeah, it's at school.
Yes.
if he could sign up for the after school weightlifting, and the coach is like, sure, show up at 7 o'clock. Swedish schools seem kind of awesome, right?
Oh, I totally agree. That was just like, yeah, I'd be down with the Swedish school.
Oskar, in the next scene, tries to buy Ely something to eat, maybe candy. I'm not sure what it is. Probably if I was Swedish, I would recognize it.
Swedish fish, I'm
Oh.
assuming that's all they eat there. If I know
That's all
anything
I
about
know.
Sweden.
That's right. Yeah. Meatballs. There's also meatballs and Lincolnberry soda.
Oh, yum. Yes.
I know that from IKEA.
Yep, of course.
Ely turns the human food down at first, but eventually she gives in and tries wine. Cut to the next shot. She's around a corner retching. Oskar feels bad, I guess, gives her a hug, or just takes advantage of the situation to give her a hug.
Yeah.
Ely asks him, do you like me? He says, yes, a lot. Then she says, if I wasn't a girl, would you still like me? Oscar's like, I suppose so. Why do you ask?
This kid is getting like every like strange answer he could possibly get from this one person every time he asks something.
Then she's like, if I was a worm, would you still like me? No, I'm just kidding. That's a meme. Is this where they show the mutilated genital shot? Surely not, because they're outside.
No, it's inside, or yeah, it's later.
You pipe up whenever it's supposed to happen, because
I'm sure I put something about that
Yeah.
in my notes because that was rather shocking. I did not remember that. But anyway,
I've realized from Dreaded Film Club that people don't understand what that scene was supposed to be about if they haven't read the book. So I'm not going to say what it's about. I'm just going to let you interpret that.
I did a little background, so I definitely.
Oh, you do.
It makes
you do
more
know the
sense.
answer, then.
Even if you don't read the book, you can read a little bit of background and it'll kind of fill in some of the gaps. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure if like we're supposed to know that in the movie. That's the thing.
I don't think you
about
could. I
separating
don't
the
think
book.
there's
Yeah.
enough. Yeah. Enough on
Yeah.
the bone.
Next, we see Oskar hanging out at his dad's place, which is nice. It seems like it's out of the city.
Mhm.
There's some land. He's enjoying some kind of motorized winter sport. I don't know enough about winter.
That'd be a snowmobile. Yeah, him going to
Is
his
that a
dad.
snowmobile?
Yes. Him going to his dad's place is like night and day. Like literally all we saw was night. And now we get like him having a great time like during the
Yes, and
day.
he's smiling
He's
and
smiling.
laughing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so his parents are clearly separated or divorced,
hmm
and his dad gets him on the weekends. So, you know, I guess it's a little unfair to compare
Yeah.
because he has all this playtime during the day
Right.
instead of just getting like nagged at by his mom for like the 5 minutes that he's awake at home. Whatever.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, back in town, Ely's guardian is getting a little paranoid, I think. He tells her that there are other people who know his face, which I guess is just from the cafe restaurant bar,
Yes.
who knows that he lives there with her, which is going to be his downfall.
hmm
Ely pretty coldly says maybe you shouldn't. Like maybe he shouldn't be living there with her. You think? He then asks Ely not to see that boy tonight, and I don't even want to follow that train of thought any further. So
Now.
we're going right on to the next scene where we see the same old guy. He's
Yep.
lurking outside the gym, watching some older kids in a not wholesome way. The gym is closing, turning out the lights, and then we see him in a room with the victim about to drain his blood. And I think the victim is like one of those teenagers.
Yes.
But the plan goes sideways. Who would have thought the victim's friends would not give up on waiting for him outside?
Yeah, it was kind of a poor plan there.
It's almost like he's trying for it to be over.
Uh-huh.
When he starts calling for help, the friends actually don't give up till they find him, and they save him, and Gross Guy has to like hide in the other room while they do that. He is truly at the end of his rope, and I could see where you see the black comedy in this a little bit.
A little bit.
Because he's right there where he just tried to attack the guy, and he's like, and then he pours acid in his face to destroy any evidence of his identity, so that he can make sure that no one can trace him back to Ely.
I do not remember these parts for some reason. These were totally surprising and shocking to me.
This was like a scarring moment for me. So I did remember.
More so for him.
I guess more so later when you see the results. But
yes. Yeah.
That's a scene that you remember. Anyway, next day, in the continuing adventures of poor Oskar at school, someone has put poor Oskar's pants in the urinal, and he walks home with no pants.
I'd be so pissed.
I would just probably fall over and die. when he gets, well, actually, it's not when he gets home. It's at Ely's place where we hear on the radio that an unidentified man has been arrested for murder and attempted murder. And Ely knows who it is, of course, right away, and she heads to the hospital to see the guy. So after some trickery, finding out that he's on the 7th floor, she does some cool vampire shit, scales the building, and makes her way to his window. There's this whole moment where he, comes to the window. He can't talk. He has like a tracheotomy respirator thing. He pulls it out, offers himself to her. She drinks his blood. Then, like, around about that moment, we get to see the other side of his face where it's like completely melted off.
Yeah.
Like you could see.
It's like Two-Face
like,
from Batman.
His part of, yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Now I don't have to describe.
Harvey, whatever.
Okay.
Harvey Dent.
So she drinks his blood and then like basically lets him fall out the window.
He would then turn into a vampire, right?
In the movie, I think he just dies.
He does, but like by vampire logic, right? He should be reborn as a vampire or something, right?
Something else happens in the book.
Oh, okay. I need to read the book. I think I'm just gonna have to do that.
I mean, if you wanna. It's kind of
Wow. Glowing recommendation. If you wanna.
A lot of people like the book. A lot of people are crazy about it. And I'm just like, it's just not my thing.
Okay, fair enough.
But come to think about it, I really don't. I'll watch vampire movies, but I really don't really enjoy vampire books, even ones without pedophilia. So perhaps I'm not a fair adjudicator of the true literary value of that book.
Gotcha.
So you remember the adult couple that are friends of the dead guy?
I sure do.
They're in bed now. The woman is asleep. The guy just like wakes her up out of nowhere. And he's like, "What kid?"
Yeah.
She's like, "What? What?" And he's like, "Why would a kid kill Yuki?" Like, dude, you just thought of that? Couldn't have told me that in the morning or like had the thought immediately after it happened, like a normal person. Anyway, Ely shows up at Oscar's window in the middle of the night. It's kind of a nice scene.
Mm-hmm.
She knocks and tells him that he has to invite her in because, vampire rules.
Yep.
I don't think he really realizes what's happening at first. But then, like, she lies down with him. He asks her, how did she get there? And she's like, oh, I flew. He's like, yeah, sure thing. Not really processing the whole vampire situation whatsoever. But he does ask her if she wants to be his girlfriend. So she responds, I'm not a girl. Is that where the genital mutilation shot happens?
No, I think it's not yet. No.
Okay. That's good because otherwise it's a nice scene. I wouldn't want it to be like.
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of a nice, except she's got blood all over her mouth, but
That's true. Not as gross as it is later though.
No.
Anyway, Ely's like, can we just, continue with things as they are? And then I guess she notices that he might kind of feel bad about that. And she's like, do you have to do anything any different when you go study?
Yeah.
And Oscar's like, no, not really. So Ely's like, alrighty then. Let's do it.
Done.
I mean, having read the book, I'm like, I know why she probably asked that. But yeah. So they end up sleeping side by side, like brother and sister, basically. Oskar wakes up trying to figure out how she got in and out of his room because she's gone. And then he finds a note that she left. So at least I think if he didn't have the note, he probably would have thought it was a dream.
Yeah.
Cut to school. It's another day in Swedish paradise where outdoor skating, I guess, is on the curriculum. Like, does everyone just have their own skates? Is this a European socialism thing? Like,
it's the hockey.
Everyone
it's
gets
the outdoor pond hockey unit.
Allotted a pair of skates.
Oh, it's incredible.
And this is like school because there are
another
teachers
point
watching
for the
everybody.
Swedish school. That's just.
No, my God. So
I love that.
But this is the lake.
Yes.
The lake where that other thing happened. That's important. So the teacher mentions like be careful with the hole in the lake, and they make fun of him because he's Spanish and he says the wrong word for hole. And so the bullies are taunting Oskar then about the hole in the ice, and they ask him if he wants to go swimming. How funny. Meanwhile, a couple of little kids are discovering the body of the second murder victim who was dumped there. The friend of what's his name? Weird cat guy? Yosta?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And his buddies. I'm really making an effort with these names, like pronouncing them, because they're not pronounced like they're spelled in my mind whatsoever.
No.
Anyway, let's remember that Oskar has recently been advised by his vampire partner that he should just hit the bullies back. And he's probably fortified after a night of getting a girlfriend.
Yeah. He's riding that high.
When like the chief bully advances on him, like Oskar hits back. And how? With a stick.
Yes.
Yes.
Whacks
Yes,
him
indeed.
real good.
The kid's ear looks like all torn up and bloody. Like Oskar did quite a number
Yes.
on that kid. And Oskar seems really happy. Meanwhile, like no teachers are around because
No.
like the Spanish teacher is over looking at the body. Like there's a very poor teacher to student ratio for this activity.
Is this where the forklift is lifting the body out of the...
Yeah, like
and it's
right
literally
after...
just one giant piece. It's like a guy encased in ice, and it made me laugh. There's little things like that.
It was a platform of some kind, but I think you're probably
No,
right.
they cut a chunk of the ice out like with him in it or something. It's just
That's
like the weirdest
hilarious.
looking thing in the background.
You know, when we're on a high note in a movie, then something bad has to happen next. So school calls Oskar's mom about him hitting the kid with his stick, which kind of pisses me off. Like, first of all, how could they not know that Oskar was being bullied? Because it happened
Right.
a lot at school
Yes.
in the first place. And second, his mom really didn't expect, like, you know, every other day he's like, I fell on the playground, you know.
Oblivious.
The mom seems sort of lazy about the relationship, to be honest.
Definitely.
But now, like, she's pretty pissed at him that he finally did something after taking so much abuse. And she's like, just wait till your dad talks to you. Here, talk to your dad. And she gives him the phone. And he just has a normal conversation like his dad is clearly not bothered at all. Dads.
Oh, that was good. I like that.
Yeah. The next scene, they're at the swimming pool. They get all kinds of amenities. Just because it's winter there, it doesn't mean they don't get to go swimming. It's like all steamy in there.
Yeah.
Man.
People pay lots of money to go to like resorts like that, I feel like.
Oh shit. Anyway, older boy is taunting Oskar while he's in the pool. Like an older boy, I'm thinking, who is that? Like, is that the older brother of the bully?
Yes, that was the
that would make
impression
sense.
I got. Yes.
Yeah, he's like, I guess you really did get to go swimming. So at the same time, we see Ely spying at the window. And then after that, Oskar and Ely get to hang out someplace in the pool complex that they're not supposed to go. And Oskar has his knife, and in a misguided attempt at bonding,
I love this,
slices his palm open so that they can be blood pals. Okay, first of all, I fucking hate this. Like, why do they always have to slice their palm right down like the middle of like? No, that's one of the most painful places. Why would you do that? Anyway, every movie ever is just like, here we go.
Ugh.
Even Harry Potter, like the sacrifice of the...
I think he like slices his hand, but he doesn't say blood brothers right away. So you actually, for a second there, you're like, is he gonna like feed her blood? But then he goes,
interesting.
Let's be blood brothers or whatever. Like there's like a beat there that they let it hang for a second. So you're like, interesting. He's come around to her being a vampire. But
anyway, she's like, oh my God, what have you done? She goes nuts and drops down to the floor, licks up
she
his
can't
blood
hold
off
back
the floor.
anymore.
I know. And then she has like this wild look at her eyes and she yells at Oskar to go away.
Oh,
and when he doesn't, she runs off, I guess, so she won't accidentally murder him and goes and hides in a tree. You know what? I think that may be a toxic friendship. If you have to constantly be on guard about not accidentally murdering your friend, probably you should remove yourself from this situation, especially if you're hundreds of years old.
It's a very unique set of circumstances that I'm guessing most couples don't find themselves in, but it's tricky.
I have questions. Anyway, meanwhile, I feel like meanwhile is the word of the day. It just keeps coming out of my mouth.
That's okay.
Meanwhile, again, the adult group of friends is still debating whether Yosta, who witnessed UK's murder, should go to the police.
Every time you say his name, I just picture him standing there like stroking a cat. This guy was great.
Yeah, he's a good character.
Oh, yeah.
The couple gets into an argument. I mean, no wonder. He's waking her up in the middle of the night. I would also be pissed. She storms off down the street and he like chases after her, like I just want to talk. I just want to talk.
That's pretty good.
But before they can just talk, he sees Ely attack her and biting her neck. In a panic, he kicks Ely off and Ely escapes into the night, I guess. And luckily, the woman survives, or perhaps unluckily, as the case may be. The next morning, the woman wakes up and she realizes the sunlight from her window is like burning her fingers and shit. Well, that is not a good sign.
No.
She takes a look in the mirror at the bite wound on her neck. I guess she can still see her reflection in the mirror. That's lucky.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
she
true.
gets pretty stressed out. You know, vampire rules are just everybody makes up their own set.
Yeah. Choose your own adventure.
Oscar's hanging out with his dad again, and at first it seems to be like the same happy good times, like doing some kind of penciled paper game.
Mhm.
And then this weird guy arrives. I totally did not understand what was going on here.
No.
The only thing I can figure out is they make a point of the drinking, like the guy, I think, brings some liquor,
Yes.
and the guy's like, Oscar, hey, how's it going, Oscar? And then I don't know the point of this other than I think Oscar feels uncomfortable.
It's a very odd vibe, and that it's shot very dramatically, but I couldn't tell why
Yeah,
it was shot dramatically because I
exactly.
couldn't tell what was going on.
Maybe if we were Swedish, we would just know,
Yeah.
like,
Because
oh,
was
that's a
that other
serial
guy just a
killer, or
friend of someone? He was just the friend of the guy, right? His
friend or
dad.
romantic partner. I mean, who
Yeah, I
knows?
don't know.
But it was too subtle for me. I could not
Me too.
figure it
I
out.
couldn't.
I'm glad that you're in the same boat.
Totally lost on me.
Oscar pulls out the note that Ely left him when she visited him in his bedroom. And we get to see what it says for the first time. And it says, I must be gone and live or stay and die.
Oh,
I mean,
poetic.
that's pretty metal.
Yes, very metal. Metal or emo? I'm thinking more emo actually, but
Sure. Or punk rock in Oscar's
punk
case.
rock. There you go.
Anyway, I guess the vibe at Dad's house plus like the feelings that Oscar's having after rereading the note, I guess.
Yeah.
In the next scene, we see him hitchhiking back to town. I'm glad that goes well for him because that could be a whole other horror movie. But
Yeah. A Swedish hitchhiking horror movie.
he's
That's what someone needs
so
to make.
little and
He
like
is. He like blends right in
androgynous
with the
and
snow because his hair is like
cute.
white. So he's just, yeah.
I know, right? I mean, absolutely the most like harmless looking little kid that they
For
could have
sure.
cast.
Yep.
Anyway, the adult crew is hanging out again when the woman turned vampire strolls into Yosta's,
What the
aka
hell was
Cat
with this
Guy's
scene?
apartment. What follows is absolute batshit madness chaos. Okay, the cats totally freak out on her. They're all over her body, like
They're
hanging
all
off
weird
of her.
CGI cats.
Right, I was gonna ask you, like that must be CGI and it's
It
pretty
is the
bad.
weird. It stands out like crazy in this movie. This looks like a
It is
scene from a different movie.
It is the one scene that really takes me out of the
Oh,
movie.
for sure. I definitely don't remember
I mean,
this from the
it's
first time I watched
hilarious.
this.
I'm all for it,
Yes.
but it's wild. Anyway, the woman ends up tumbling down the stairs with the like weight of this cat attack, and she winds up getting admitted to a hospital. Meanwhile, Oscar's back at home and he urgently taps out a Morse code message to Ely. She invites him over. And so I guess this is the first time that he's gone into her place.
Yes.
He notices stuff like there's no furniture. The place is practically empty. Other things just sort of feel off.
Yeah.
And then after she lets him in, she like closes the glass door in between them and they have this conversation. Oscar has started to put the pieces together. So he asks if she's a vampire. She admits that yes, she lives off blood. No, she's not dead. Yes, she's been 12 a long time. It's all the creepier that she's 12 a long time rather than like 573. You know what I
Oh
mean?
God,
Like,
yeah.
just makes everything worse. But also, I guess if she was 500, she couldn't really have a relationship with him. So she has to be 12 for a
Legally
long time.
correct. Yes. True.
I don't know, man. Now that he's been initiated into the Vampire Friend Club, she can open the door and let him through, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's, still trying to wrap his head around
He's
this new reality.
He's kind of a dummy. I don't know. Are you getting that? Did you get that
Yeah.
vibe throughout this movie? You're like, Oscar,
what?
come on, a little quicker here. Like,
Okay,
start putting
yeah,
some of this together a little bit.
He's not so quick,
Not so
but
quick.
also, like, he's just kind of desperate for any friendship at all.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that plays into it too, but
You never see him with any other kid.
no.
Like, except in a negative way.
Yes.
But he asked her if she's poor. I thought that was hilarious.
Yes, me too.
Because there wasn't much in the apartment. He does start to put some stuff together. Like, she has some treasures.
Like a valuable metal egg?
And she's like, if I sold that egg, I could buy a whole nuclear power plant.
That was a weird little thing there.
Yeah, and she's like, put your finger on it. And when he does, it falls apart like puzzle pieces. It's really
Yeah,
cool, actually.
I agree.
And what it has inside is a bunch of rings. And then you're like, oh. And Oscar's like, oh. He's like, where are those from? And then she ends up offering him some money for some reason, but he's not having it. He's like, you stole that from people that you killed, right? And she tells him, people gave it to me for like different reasons. Gross. Anyway,
yeah.
At this point, Oscar wants to go home. Can't really blame him. Meanwhile, the woman that I'm just going to lean into that. The woman who turned into a vampire is now in the hospital. She's clearly like done with this whole thing. And she's like, hey, doc, would you mind opening the curtains
this
there?
Is great.
And we know how that will end. Sure enough, as soon as the sunlight hits her, she like bursts into giant ass flames. It's pretty funny. It's like almost as funny as the cats.
This plot line I kind of just loved. It's a super quick plot line. It's like,
yeah,
they introduce it so late and you're just like, what the hell's with this woman?
It's like, it's effective, right? That's one of the holes that has to be filled in a vampire like world building.
Right, exactly.
Brutal, but effective. Later, in one of the most disturbing scenes, Ely comes over to see Oskar and he asks what would happen if he didn't invite her in. Like, what if you just walked in on your own? I'm not sure why she did this, but she's like, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
And she steps inside without an invitation, and then she starts like trembling and like bleeding from everywhere, just like out of her scalp, just out of her pores, And Oskar like freaks out and immediately like feels terrible for asking. But also I'm like, vampire kid, that's pretty manipulative. Like, you could have just explained it.
Well, like early on in a relationship, you get a lot of these types of disagreements and misunderstandings. It's normal for a relationship for your partner to like bleed out of her eyes.
Yeah, you're the romance expert, so I'll just have to take what you say.
Totally normal.
Face value. So after the whole bleeding out of everywhere incident, they hang out and chat for a while, and then they head to Oscar's apartment because that's where all the cool stuff is.
Yes.
So they listen to some tunes, have a good time. Then his mom comes home, and Eli zips out the window just in time. I guess they have it locked from the inside.
Oh, so that's where this is where she shows.
Oh, that's where it was for real?
It's that scene.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a weird scene.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because Oscar goes like, Eli goes to take a shower, I guess. And Oscar kind of peeks in, I think.
In our version, or in my version right now, like you just see her coming out having showered.
Oh, interesting.
So
yeah, you kind of need the other scene. I mean, unfortunately.
Bunch of prudes.
Yeah. Kind of lame.
Censoring our horror movies. Later, while his mom is asleep and he makes sure that she's asleep, Oskar sneaks back over to Eli's place, wakes up there the next morning on the floor with a note from, unless something else has been censored out, I don't know. He wakes up with a note that says she's in the bathroom, don't come in, but also she really likes him and does he want to hang out that night? Meanwhile, the aggrieved man from earlier, whose lady friend was turned into a vampire and then suicided by fire, has somehow tracked down Healy's apartment. I guess it's because of seeing the guy in the cafe originally, like they put it all together.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of fuzzy, but he sneaks in, he's like notices stuff like the windows are covered up, and he starts poking around. He grabs the knife from the kitchen. So they do have some stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when we realize, like, because we see a shot of the kitchen, that Oscar's been hiding under the kitchen table, the whole time, must have heard the guy coming in. So the guy creeps toward the bathroom, opens the door, and then we see a top-down shot of like the bathtub covered up. And we realize like that must be where she is.
Mm-hmm.
He uncovers her. She's like fast asleep, very vulnerable, and he's about to stab her. And then we see Oskar sneak up behind him with Chekhov's knife.
Yep. Finally gets his chance to use it.
Every time that happens in a movie, I'm like, there it is.
And there's the payoff.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm like, why did we have to see that shit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Always
Anyway.
a reason.
So as the guy moves to uncover the window to let in the sunlight, Oskar yells, "Nay!" And that wakes up Ely just in time. And she absolutely obliterates him.
Yes.
In the aftermath, Ely, face all bloody gross, leans in and kisses Oskar. Ew. The moment is interrupted by knocking at the door. I think there's like several knockings at the door. And it's Oscar's mom. She's super pissed, I guess, because she couldn't find him when she woke up. I don't know. Parenting, you know.
Something.
Ely packs up her place like she really does have to get out of town now that she's been found out.
Mm-hmm.
And Oskar is left to brood and contemplate going back to his lonely life without her while he places his palm on the condensated window pane. Then Oskar gets a phone call. Yeah, this is where I'm like, Oskar, you're not that smart, are you?
No.
Someone on the phone claims that the Spanish teacher is asking if he's coming to weightlifting that night. But it's actually the bullies, and they've clearly got a plan. So Oskar heads to water aerobics, which is actually pretty funny for about like 2 seconds.
Yes.
And then the bullies set a fire to distract like the one adult away
This
from the
was
pool.
Pretty intense thing to do, like lighting a dumpster on fire.
Swedes, they're
Yeah,
serious about
serious
this.
bullying.
The bullies stroll into the pool area. Now it's like the main ringleader bully of the small kids, plus like who we think is his older brother.
Yeah.
The older brother is like, get lost to like the other kid who's standing there or leading the aerobics. And he's got a knife. And I don't think it actually ever says whether he's the guy's brother or not. Maybe we're just supposed to assume. Because why else would he have this vendetta against this little kid, you know?
Yeah.
But I think what it is, they had to get an older kid involved. Otherwise, we were going to be a little upset about this sort of oversized reaction
Yes.
that's about to take place.
Yes.
So anyway, the older kid is like, hey, Oskar, you got a choice. You can either hold your breath underwater for 3 minutes, or I'm going to gouge one of your eyes out with my knife.
He does have another choice, which is just swim away.
He didn't say that in my movie.
No. I'm saying that there's a bunch of bullies in regular clothes.
There's too many of them.
Just swim back and forth. None of them are going to jump in the water to get you. Just swim.
I can see why he feels cornered, because water is slow. If you're not a good swimmer,
Okay,
they could just jump in and surround you, you know?
That's
like,
fair. Okay.
You know, when it's a matter of drowning, like, there were no good options, I think, for him.
Yeah, that's fair.
And also, I think he believes he's going to voluntarily try to hold his breath. So,
yeah, good luck with
but
that.
it's not that situation.
No.
The bully forces Oscar's head underwater, holding him there while the two younger bullies are like already regretting their life choices.
Yes,
I think they're like, come on, let's not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And the teenager's like, no, man, we're in it, you know. And then we get the shot.
Yes.
It's fucking amazing. This makes the whole movie worth it.
Absolutely.
So Oscar's head is still underwater, which is the funniest thing. It's like the camera doesn't move. So we see him under his head being held underwater by the bully's hand. And then we hear like some sound, like some muffled chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sound of swift, violent conflict muted by the water. And suddenly a head drops into the pool, like way back far away from us in the corner. And then the bully's arm, which had been holding Oskar down, we see that it's been severed. It just sort of floats away. Good. And of course, it's Ely, who has arrived just in time to save him. And then they smile at each other.
Oh, so sweet.
And then we've arrived at the final scene. And it sort of ends like much quicker than I expected, like from that point. Like you expect some more like denouement, you know, but no, it's just Oscar's traveling on a train, sitting quietly, and Ely is presumably packed inside a
Yeah.
big trunk along for the ride. So they're together for now.
Yes.
And that's the end. Any observations from you, Bill, about how this ended?
I don't think they needed that last scene. I think if they would have
Really?
just ended it at the pool,
That's interesting. I never considered that option.
because they look and smile at each other, like that's all you need. You don't have to like show what we already think is going to happen.
You know, right?
I
You
don't
might
know.
be a movie making genius because that didn't
Maybe.
even occur to me.
I don't know. I just like I like when things end abruptly, kind of, as opposed to like getting
I
those
do
extra
too.
scenes that get little flower. Like, it's fine. I don't know.
That's kind of a modern sensibility, isn't it?
Yes,
Like I think the internet has brought that on.
I could see that. But yeah, that's what I thought about the ending. What did you think about it?
I feel conflicted about it, and that it may or may not have to do with me being able to separate certain things or not from the book.
Sure.
So I'm going to try my best to pretend like the book doesn't exist. That said, I question whether this is the best ending for Oscar, like the best life for Oscar,
No.
who's 12. He's
Right.
fucking 12. Also, think about who he's replacing,
Well, I
essentially.
was gonna say
Although
he's the new guardian, more or less. So
yes
what
and
makes
no.
him thinks he's not going to suffer the same fate that the.
He doesn't even know.
Oh, I guess he doesn't. He
He doesn't
never
know.
meets him. Oh, interesting.
Right.
Huh.
So it's sort of back on Ely, like, what do we think that she think? Like, on the one hand, she doesn't really have a choice.
Right.
She's got to have a human to help her out, at
And
least
and that's because she
protect her
can't
in
be
the
found
daytime,
out.
at the very
Oh, I
least.
guess, yeah. Why can't she just
I
go and
mean,
kill for herself at night?
she can, but she's not that good at it. She's a
Well,
child,
she's better than
like
the other guy, I would say.
by now, but that's only because he's gotten old.
Good point. Okay, fair enough.
That's why she wasn't that nice to him, because they were never really friends. They
Right.
had an arrangement, which was
Sure.
gross.
Yes.
But
Okay.
he got too old to hold up his end of the bargain.
Right.
So that was the end of him. Now, does she see Oscar that way? I don't think so at all. I
No.
believe that she has affection for him as a friend and such. But I guess I will say more about that when we're discussing like our final thoughts
Okay.
and our ratings. But
Sure.
speaking of that, shall we have our final thoughts and ratings?
Sure. I didn't write anything. Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I go first. I don't mind.
All right.
So I think unquestionably this is a well-made movie. It's beautiful to look at. That's probably what you remember the most, right? You
Yes.
said. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should have just left it at that. Like the 1980s period details seem like very on point. Although I don't know what Sweden looked like at that time. They could have made it all up and I wouldn't have known any different. I'm like, sure, it's dark and it snows all the time. It's great.
Kudos to you for your awareness, your self-awareness.
The kid actors were amazing. Like they eclipsed the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually did win some awards for their performances. And maybe it's just because I haven't seen that many Swedish movies, but it reminded me of that 80s movie, My Life as a Dog. Did you ever happen to see that?
No, I've not.
My mom was really good at like sort of making sure I saw all these movies from different places.
Cool.
And this one was marketed for kids, but it was kind of like this. It was like a movie that is for adults about kids, which is also a weird thing.
Yeah.
It took place in the same time period, I think. There was like a preteen romance. But that brings up a good point. Like, this is more of a romance than a horror, even though it's kids. I mean, it's not like fucking Twilight, thank God, but
Came out the
the
same year,
romance,
interestingly enough.
that's so interesting. The romance is definitely at the heart of the plot, no pun
Yes.
intended, which is not something that I enjoy, and I doubly do not enjoy it when the romance is between children. And I feel weird that this is even something that adults want to watch a movie about. I have always felt that way, like even since I was a kid watching these kind of movies. That said, I do sympathize with the characters in the movie, like the way that I think we're supposed to and we're being manipulated to. And I do think it's super important in the story that the vampire is a kid and identifies as being a kid, being 12. We feel for her because she was turned into a monster so young, probably by a perv. And now she's stuck having to rely on adults, fucking adults,
Yeah.
like for the rest of her existence in order to survive, which has undoubtedly, whether you read the book or not, led to her doing some sad and compromising things. I feel a little bit better for her by the end because than I do for Oskar for sure. She comes out on top, like at least for a little while, she gets to travel and have adventures with somebody that she cares about and who's a friend.
Right.
But what's gonna happen when he grows up? Like,
Yes.
what happens when he gets to be 15 or 6, like 20? Like, so they can't be in a relationship anymore. That's fucking weird.
Huh.
And then, I mean, if she turns him to a vampire, they're both gonna be stuck. They're both gonna need someone else, you know?
Yeah.
They can't even rent a hotel room together. Well, and, and eventually he'll get too old to help. He'll suffer the same fate as the
Yeah.
last guy, even if it started out as a friendship. And also, I mean, what about Oscar's parents? Like, they're
Yeah.
not perfect, and I don't know what the deal with the dad was.
No.
He's supposed to be an alcoholic, but let's put this into perspective. Like, their kid went missing for a romance with a vampire. So that's really my problem with this story, the story of the movie.
Sure.
Like all the icky stuff with the dead guardian aside for now, because that doesn't play as big a part in the movie. I think they really tried to minimize it to make it a palatable story for a movie. So, just on that alone, like I'm going to give it points for being a well-made, beautiful movie with great kid actors. And it hits all the story beats, but I'm going to deduct for all the reasons I stated, and
Okay.
I think I'm going with the 3.5. What do you think?
Oh, well thought out. I can see where you're coming from with that. I thought you were going to go lower actually based on all those
I thought about
qualifiers.
it. I thought
Wow.
about it. But you know what? I mean, it's also about movie making.
Yeah,
It's not just about having the perfect story, although story is very important to me.
says the writer.
That might have something to do with it.
Maybe a little bit. So, as I mentioned earlier, like I remember the aesthetic of this movie and it just being shot really well. I saw all of those like, black backdrops with like the white snow. Like that's what I would have pictured when I try to remember this movie. This viewing, I have to say, it's much bleaker than I remember. Like it's just everything. Like it's a very like kind of quiet movie and it's like this very quaint but kind of creepy small town. Like it's just a very unnerving environment. And yeah, there's just kind of no good ending for anyone, really, in a
It's
way.
not Pixar.
Yeah, it is it's very bleak, but I really enjoyed watching it this time. I thought Oscar was much dumber than I remember him being the first time I watched. Yeah, the kid actors are just incredible. The adults are kind of, yeah, they do their thing.
They're all right.
They're fine. But yeah, the ending alone, I mean, I think that bumps it up like a solid point. This is one of those just classic horror endings.
You mean the
Um,
pool, not the train, right?
oh no, yes, the pool, not the train.
Just making
Sorry.
sure.
Yes, no,
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of the train.
I agree with you about the pool.
However, with that, I do have to take at least a half a scream off just for the CGI cats. That one caught me off guard. And, like I almost got knocked over by those.
I'm not even mad about that.
No,
It was too funny.
it was pretty funny. So with all that being said, I'm giving this movie 4 out of 5 screams.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm a little bit like I hold on to my screams pretty tight, so I'm going to 4. It's a big step for me.
That's so interesting. I really had no idea
No?
where you were going to come out on this one because it's unlike anything else we've covered in the
Yeah.
podcast or like even personally talked about.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a very just different movie in general. Like, I don't know what you could, with all the vampire movies, what even relates to this movie. It's just such a uniquely shot movie, like everything's just super unique about it. I mean, it's
It's
refreshing.
like it's a story,
Yeah.
and the only thing they take from the vampire lore is like a few rules.
Yes.
The rest is just all the
Yeah,
characters,
it's true.
which I like that part about it.
Have you seen the American remake, Let Me In? I think they changed the name.
I have. Not as good in my opinion, and
Yeah.
also you don't get the same feeling. I think there's not a pedo in it. So
Yeah.
I think totally get rid of that element. So like you don't really get the feeling that Oscar's going to be possibly in as much danger
Oh,
as you
okay.
do in this one.
Gotcha.
And also like I think the Oscar child is not called Oscar, but I think that kid has a much shittier home life. So they're like, yeah, please
Huh.
rescue this poor American kid, like from his broken,
Oh,
like
interesting.
truly dysfunctional home.
Hmm.
It's kind of like doing him a favor.
Right.
But I think maybe that's what they had to do to have American audiences be okay with it.
Right.
Whereas maybe that story wouldn't even be realistic in Sweden because everyone's happy.
Yeah, it seems like a weird adaptation. I watched the trailer of it. I didn't see the US version, but like a lot of it just seemed samey, but kind of odd because it's American. I don't know.
Yeah,
It looked,
different in big conceptual ways,
yes.
but like parallel in a lot of like the scenes and the shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all right. That was my impression. I watched it like right after I watched this one
Oh,
because I
okay.
just wanted to see what it was like.
Yes.
And I didn't think it was horrible or
It
anything.
got good
It
ratings. It's
wasn't
got like a
very,
7.1 IMDb, which is pretty good for a horror movie, I'd say. So it's
it's
refreshing to see
true.
like a remake done that's actually done well. So maybe I'll check it out.
Also, if it was the time of Twilight, like everyone was nuts about those movies and they
Yes.
were probably looking for anything similar. Like that's probably why it was a good time for it to get made.
Do you think someone going from Twilight to this movie would be confused or like,
I mean, to the Swedish movie,
yeah,
I think they would probably not get what they were looking
yeah,
for. I think
okay,
they would want their couple to be a little older.
sure.
They probably want there to be some more like making out, gross stuff, you
Right,
know.
right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I can't get in the head of one of those people.
I have I've only seen
Sorry.
half of one of the movies, so I am not a Twilight person.
I will admit to you and anyone who's listening that I did read all the books.
Wow.
But that's only because I wanted to see what it's about and I read a lot of books anyway,
Sure.
you know. But I
It
was just
was
like
bound to happen.
reading it and like look at this. It's terrible, the whole time. All through the entire series. Those are
Man.
big ass books too.
Oh
Oh my
yeah.
God. There's so much exposition and that's a whole other podcast, but like get some editing. But I guess
Yeah.
people that read those books don't really care about that stuff. They're just
No.
happy to read whatever.
Sure.
Like, don't let me say anything else about Twilight, please.
I won't do it. Well, with that in mind, do you have anything else to say about Let the Right One In?
I think I should be cut off at this
Completely?
point.
We're muting your mic.
I did say all the words that I feel like I need to say about Let the Right One In.
All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it up here. So we spent this episode in a small Swedish town navigating this most unusual teen romance. In our next episode, we raise the stakes. See what I did there? And head east to Moscow as we close out our Vampires Without Borders series with 2004's fantasy horror film Night Watch. Until then, please follow us on your preferred podcast platform and tell a friend or many friends about our show. Stay spooky.
See ya.